If you believe they caved, that means you think something better could have happened than this. What?
When you say something better than this, what is this? I mean, we basically now we have to look forward to a doomed vote in the Senate where it requires 60 votes to be able to do anything with the ACA. That's not going to happen. If by some miracle it does pass in the Senate, then it's got to go over to the House. That's not going to happen. And if by some miracle on top of a miracle it passes the House, then we have to rely on Donald Trump, who hates Obamacare and its namesake, to sign this thing into law. So what this means is that they have figured out a way to effectively kill the ACA, hobble the ACA in whatever way they could think to.
In today's video, Tyler Cohen destroys Chris Cuomo on NewsNation in a heated debate over the government shutdown and the Affordable Care Act. Tyler Cohen takes on Chris Cuomo's both sides argument head on, exposing how false equivalence only helps Republicans dodge accountability for years of sabotaging healthcare reform. While Chris Cuomo tries to paint Democrats and Republicans as equally responsible, Tyler Cohen calls out the real issue. One party is fighting to protect affordable coverage, and the other is fighting to take it away. So let's dive in and watch how Tyler Cohen shuts down Chris Cuomo on
NewsNation. Look, Brian, I get the problem, and I have no problem with you guys going after Schumer. You do you. Figure out what leaders work for you. But the miracle is what you're asking for. No shutdown has ever ended with a policy change that the minority who started the shutdown wanted. We both know this, and I believe your expectation is fine. You should want what you want. But you're too smart. You know it was never going to happen this way, and I think you're making this case to take down Schumer and the leadership, which I'm fine with. I'm just not fine with you pretending a deal was possible to end the shutdown.
To claim that the shutdown would not have resulted in any deal as far as the ACA is concerned ignores the fact that Trump and Republicans knew that they were getting killed on this thing in the polls. 2-1, by a 2-1 margin, independents saw that the shutdown was the fault of this administration. You've shown the graphic numerous times. The Kaiser Family Foundation showed that 8 in 10 Americans wanted these ACA subsidies to be extended.
Yeah, but you know those numbers dropped. You know those numbers dropped during the duration of the shutdown. You guys took so long, you caused so much pain that you lost part of your base. And again, I've said it many times, and you know this personally, you guys are fighting the right fight. Affordability is the right fight, and healthcare cost is the right fight. But again, I don't get where you're coming from. I get you saying, hey, we need a deal, we need leverage. I get the desperation. You can't point to any shutdown ever ending, even when the polls were against the majority party on the issue, that resulted in a policy change when Democrats were in the majority or Republicans, because you don't do that, because you'll never have anything but shutdowns.
Everything that we're seeing right now is unprecedented. The notion that nothing could happen now because it hasn't happened in the past is disproven on a daily basis.
But not with these, and none of the people who are on your side of this, and again, I can't keep saying it enough because of the way you guys chop up everything on social media, but I'm with you on the fight. But to hear Senator Murphy and these other guys, Ro Khanna, they weren't working for deals for this. They've just been flogging that this is terrible, which I get. But they weren't even trying to make a deal, Senator Murphy. The only guys who were trying were Fetterman and Kaine. So the only people who are trying to make a deal are the guys you're demonizing for not getting a deal when you were never going to get a deal.
Chris, the deal was simple. The deal was come to the table and extend the ACA subsidies that were already in existence. The same ACA subsidies that at that time, you know, 3/4 of the American people were in support of.
It's like when Trump's guys asked for money for the wall that the American people said they wanted with the results in the election, and the Democrats said, no way, you're not getting it. You don't have the majority.
Chris, this comes in the aftermath. This comes in the aftermath of an election where Republicans got absolutely routed on the backdrop of this very shutdown.
Yeah, but hold on a second, Brian.
If you're a Republican Party,
I'm with you, but you only won the races you were supposed to win in an off-year election.
Georgia, Mississippi, Maine, California by a 2/3 margin. Pennsylvania, Supreme Court retention race.
They were all blue seats. I mean, you only won a couple of non-blue seats. I get the results, but I don't think they mean as much.
Georgia's public safety commission, these are seats that Democrats hadn't won in decades, and they won them by 25-point margins.
Tyler Cohen and Chris Cuomo perfectly captures the frustration many Americans feel about how political logic has replaced political courage. Chris Cuomo argues that shutdowns never lead to policy change, that it's impossible to pressure a president into protecting things like ACA subsidies. But that's simply not true, and Brian Tyler Cohen is absolutely right to challenge that outdated thinking. History shows that public pressure has forced government action countless times. The 2018-2019 government shutdown, for example, ended after enormous backlash, not because of some backroom deal, but because Americans overwhelmingly blamed the Trump administration for the chaos. When nearly 80% of Americans support ACA subsidies and Republicans are polling underwater by double digits, that is leverage. To ignore that reality is to ignore how democracy functions. Chris Cuomo's both sides framing falls apart under scrutiny. Democrats weren't playing political games here. They were fighting to keep healthcare affordable for millions of families. Meanwhile, Republicans have spent over a decade trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act with no viable replacement. Removing subsidies doesn't just hurt low-income Americans, it drives up costs for everyone by shrinking the risk pool and increasing hospital debt. So when Brian Tyler Cohen pushes back, he's not being idealistic. He's being realistic about what's at stake. This isn't about partisan wins. It's about preventing a healthcare crisis that could devastate millions. And that's the kind of urgency America needs more of in these debates.
And that's because affordability is real, populist outrage is real, and I am with you on it. And I'm telling you, I think it's the good fight, if you fight it a good way. But let's not talk about some local boundary commissioner like that is in any way portentous. You start winning red governorships, you start winning red congressional seats, and now that's the kind of momentum we're talking about.
Abigail Spanberger,
very
she
good.
unseated a Republican.
Very good.
A Republican
Mikey Sherrill, very good, but not the Democrats that are in vogue with you guys right now. They do not have a lot of the positions that you want on your DSA side.
So let me ask you this question, because you say this is not the right fight, not the right vehicle. Explain to me what other vehicle we could possibly have used than the little bit of leverage that Democrats had to prevent giving those 7 votes that we needed to reopen the government. What leverage do we have now other than, a pinky promise by John Thune and by John Thune alone, not even Mike Johnson, that he'll bring this thing up for a vote, which we all know is going to be doomed?
Now, in epistemology and logic, this is called the presentation of a Hobson's choice, which is where it's set up where there is no good choice, because there is nothing that you can do in the minority. No, but listen, and I get the frustration of that. But the idea that what you are really asking, Brian Tyler Cohen, is keep the shutdown going, keep the pain into the holidays going, when there is no chance that the majority, unless you have some unforeseen, literally a miraculous event, it would be the first time it ever happened. And they don't believe they're losing the shutdown optics. I think they're wrong, but they don't even believe it, Brian. That's why I'm saying I get what's wrong. I don't get how you think you're going to make it right.
I think the problem here is that there is an expectation from everybody in this country, especially folks in the media, though, that the Democrats are always going to swoop in and be the adults in the room and save the Republicans from the disastrous policies that they themselves put forward. And so the fact that we can sit here and discuss this idea that, oh, there's no way that this possibly could have done because we all know the Republican Party, we all know these people wouldn't have extended these ACA subsidies, and even if it meant that Americans had to starve to the tune of 42 million Americans, even if it means that 24 million Americans are going to see their ACA subsidies double, triple, quadruple as we head into 2026, even as we watch 17 million Americans lose their Medicaid, God forbid we ever accept the notion that Republicans could recognize the pain that they're putting on people and that they might for once be the adults in the room. It is so it's just so outside the realm of possibility for everyone to ever just suppose that Republicans might do the right thing
I don't
be the people to reduce this pain.
Gentler.
It always
I don't
has
believe
to be
in
the Democrats.
Brian, you got the wrong guy.
This part really exposes the deep divide in how both sides view political accountability. Chris Cuomo argues that Democrats keeping the shutdown going was a Hobson's choice, meaning there was no good option. But that completely misses the point. The truth is the Democratic Party's leverage was one of the few tools they had left to push back against policies that would gut healthcare protections for millions. Brian Tyler Cohen is right to highlight how Republicans consistently refuse to act in good faith when it comes to healthcare. The data backs this up. Since 2017, Republicans have voted more than 70 times to repeal or weaken the Affordable Care Act without ever proposing a comprehensive replacement. Meanwhile, studies from the Kaiser Family Foundation showed that repealing ACA subsidies would cause premiums to spike by an average of 25-30% nationwide, leaving millions uninsured or underinsured. That's not a minor policy disagreement. That's life and death for working families. Cuomo's argument that Democrats should have just accepted the situation because miracles never happen also falls apart under scrutiny. History shows that political pressure and public outrage can shift the game fast, from the 2013 shutdown over Obamacare to the public backlash that stopped the 2017 repeal effort. Change doesn't happen by conceding, it happens by refusing to normalize cruelty and incompetence. So when Brian Tyler Cohen refuses to accept that Republicans will never do the right thing, he's not being naive, he's being moral. He's standing up for the idea that leadership isn't about surrendering to broken systems, but demanding better, even when it's inconvenient.
Okay, I'm a student of Machiavelli. I've been involved in 16 campaigns with people named Cuomo. I believe in game theory. And do you know what you learn in game theory? If you play by the normal rules, what happens? You lose. So you have to do, what do they call? Change the rules, also known as cheating, okay? And that is at play in politics like nowhere else. I get it. I'm with you. I'll give you your leverage. It was never going to happen this way, but I get why you did it this way, because you set up Schumer and these guys to take the loss, where the new left got the win, which is we're not talking about something that you and I are so happy to be talking about. These subsidies would have faded. And we're talking about it. And now if they don't have the vote, they look terrible. If they have the vote and they vote against them on the right, they look terrible. And you're having the right conversation. You're right about what's wrong. I'm with you. But this is what you should be doing. Chasing that issue, saying this is how they abuse their power, and proving that you have better ways to do this. You know we're one law away, right? You know if they could pass one law that we're going to hold all costs at Medicare levels for anything that gets the government subsidy, you know, costs would start turning literally almost overnight. The only reason it won't happen is what? Because what these two parties want is advantage over the other, not fixing the problem. They want to win the blame game. That's my concern, Brian. I want to make sure you're on the right page.
I hear you. And look, if there's ever a moment where, you know, we can continue bringing costs down, you got a lot more Democrats who are perfectly willing and able and eager to make sure that the government can negotiate lower drug prices.
And independents and Republicans. Everybody wants this to change. That's what you have going for you. I just think that this was a marginal win because you got us talking about the right thing, but the price may come back to haunt you. But we'll keep talking about it. I get your frustration. Again, it's a weird situation. You're right about what's wrong, but how to make it right is where it gets tricky. And I see what's happening in the Democratic Party. I'm not for it or against it. We've seen it before with MAGA. I'm just hoping MAGA learned from that and not to become what it opposes. But we'll see. We'll see. Last word to you.
I think if we see a new iteration of a Democratic Party that doesn't take just these symbolic wins where, okay, we thrust these issues into the spotlight, frankly, that's not enough for me anymore. That's not enough for the Democratic base anymore. And it's not enough for the country anymore, where we can just put into the zeitgeist the fact that something really terrible is happening, and at least we're talking about it. At this point, we need some tangible wins, and we need folks that are going to go to the mat to make sure that we get them.
I'm with you. It was just never going to happen this way. It doesn't matter who's running the party. Going by shutdown has never yielded the result that you want.
Brian Tyler Cohen and Chris Cuomo hits at something deeper than just policy. It's about how both sides view the very purpose of politics. Chris Cuomo leans on this idea that politics is a Machiavellian game where power matters more than principle and where changing the rules is just how the system works. But that's exactly the mindset that's gotten the US into the mess it's in. When Tyler Cohen pushes back, he's essentially challenging the normalization of political cynicism, and he's right to do so. Let's look at the facts. The same corporate-driven logic Cuomo defends has kept drug prices in the US nearly 250% higher than in most developed countries according to OECD data. And while Cuomo talks about playing to win, Americans are the ones losing, with over 40% skipping prescriptions because of cost. That's not strategy, that's systemic neglect. Brian's point about Democrats needing tangible wins isn't just idealism, it's what the data supports. Since the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, Medicare has finally begun negotiating drug prices, a move projected to save taxpayers $100 billion over the next decade. That's a real measurable win, and it only happened because progressives kept pushing despite people like Cuomo saying that's not how the game works. The truth is, politics shouldn't just be about winning the blame game, as Cuomo puts it. It should be about improving lives. Tyler Cohen represents that growing demand for results over rhetoric, for leaders who prioritize people over political theater. And that's not naive, that's necessary. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing, and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.